Hello and welcome to another edition of Ghetto Watchfinder. Today's drink will be this bottle of Legendario. I didn't even know I still had this. I was, looking for something to drink, and I bought this a few years ago in Cuba. Must have been 5-6 years ago. If you ever visit Havana, they have the original Bacardi building there, and you can buy a bottle of Cuban rum made in that building for the equivalent of $4. So, okay, well, that's not bad. 34% alcohol, well, that's all right. Good enough for now. I guess I should get some Jägermeister or something. Anyway, so today's watch is the Explorer 2. Now, the Explorer 2 was introduced by Rolex in 1971. I guess they didn't really know what to do anymore. See, the original Explorer, which is basically an Oyster Perpetual with the word Explorer written on the dial, was introduced after Edmund Hillary and his Sherpa guide. I forgot his name now, Norgan Teng something. Well, they went on Mount Everest, and then Rolex released the Explorer and marketed it as a tough outdoors watch for the tough outdoors types, but it wasn't actually an Explorer that went on the expedition. It was a regular Oyster Perpetual that went on the expedition, and the Explorer was introduced afterwards, and it's really just an Oyster Perpetual with the word Explorer written on it. And then 20 years later or so, in the early 1970s, they came up with the concept for the Explorer 2, which combines a GMT movement with a fixed bezel. So you have a larger case. It's a 42 millimeter instead of the 40 millimeter that you have with the Submariner. These come in white and black. The original model from the 70s actually has a different design, and then this design was introduced in 1989, if I'm not mistaken. And what it does is that you have this hand here, the orange hand, that shows you a second time zone. So for example, I could set this to 10 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the evening, right? And knowing that Germany is 6 hours ahead, I could put the orange hand on the 4, which is, 4 in the morning. And then the 16 would be 4 in the afternoon. So you get the two time zones. Rolex's idea is actually that this is a watch for people that work underground in caves, so that they can tell whether it's daytime or nighttime outside. That's why you have the 24-hour scale, but you can really use it as a GMT watch. It's a good idea, and this thing is really, really undervalued. If you look at used Rolex prices, there's the typical vintage Oysters, the Datejusts, the 6694, which start at maybe $2,500, $3,000. Then you get into the Air Kings, and then you get into these, and these cost less than a Submariner, and they cost significantly less than a GMT Master, even though this is the GMT Master movement in there. So these really should be far more expensive than they are. Unfortunately, they are not. Now, of course, this is not a real one. This is a shitty replica, which I got for free, actually. So there's this guy on that website that we visit, and I bought his Oyster Perpetual and posted some reviews, and as a result, he saw hugely increased traffic to his store, and so as a thank you, he asked me which watch I would like for free, and I said, well, I want to have this one because I like the white dial. Unfortunately, he sent it to me with a black rubber strap, which was total shit, and the clasp broke, so I put it on leather. I bought this in a brick and mortar store. Forgot the brand name. What is this called? A Condor? Something like that. Maybe it's called a condom. I don't know. So I think the white stitching goes well with the white dial. Okay. And now, if you bought this watch on this Chinese website, you would spend $60 on it. It's got the typical 28-13 movement, so the movement of the seconds hand is a bit choppy, only 6 beats per second. The magnification of the crystal is absolutely horrible, although the date wheel is not too bad, you know, given the money, the bezel and all that. It's a reasonable impression of the real deal at a certain distance. However, and, you know, there's no bracelet, which means I cannot point out how cheap and shitty the bracelet undoubtedly would be at $60. However, that orange hand is useless because, as you may have noticed, when you adjust the time, the orange hand moves too, and it's always exactly 12 hours ahead of the main hand. So if I put this, for example, at, you know, whatever time I want to put it on. This is at 2 o'clock. This is at 2 o'clock. See, this is 2 o'clock, 14 o'clock, 1400 if you want. If I put it now back at 12 or midnight, this thing is going to show 6. So it's always, you know, it's synchronized with the main hand. You cannot change that. It will move around as the time progresses, but it always stays at the same position in relation to the normal hour hand, which means it doesn't have the GMT function at all. It just looks like it does. And that's a huge disappointment. Obviously, at $60, you cannot expect there to be a custom GMT movement in there. You cannot really expect much for $60. I should also point out that the Reo is not engraved. There is no Rolex crown at the 6 o'clock position. This is really not a very good replica, and it's also incredibly noisy. If you get the movement going, well, you probably can't hear it, but it's quite noisy even when you're wearing it on your arm and your arm is down by your sides. You can still hear the rotor, and it's, you know, it varies from watch to watch, I guess, but it's really not great. Because of that orange hand not being able to be adjusted independently, I wouldn't spend money on this. I would not buy this with my own money because it's just a disappointment, really. So this is something you would get for the look, but if you really want something with the functionality of the GMT, I recommend that you save up and either buy an original or buy a better replica. All right, so now I'm gonna leave you alone because I have to finish this bottle, and also I'm not wearing any pants. So join me again next time at Ghetto Watchfinder.